All right, so what is cloud computing exactly? Well, the definition of cloud computing is that it's a way of using computers and storing data over the internet instead of on your own physical devices or servers. So back before the internet, right, if a business wanted to set up a network between their computers, they would have to set up their own servers, maybe hire an IT professional to configure those servers, hook them up, right? And if it's before the internet, there's probably going to be a lot of wires involved, right, connecting these devices together. But now with the advent of the internet, you no longer need to set up your own servers in-house at your business, at your home. You can actually outsource that, right, to a cloud service provider. Now, when we outsource it, right, they're not delivering, server resources, by box truck, right, and driving it and dropping it off in a cardboard box. They're delivering it over the internet. So essentially, you're eliminating this entire component that a lot of software businesses, even businesses that don't specialize in software, maybe they're a financial business, right? But if they have a lot of computing, right, that they have to do as part of their regular business, no longer do they need to set up the entire servers, right, in-house. They can actually outsource it to a cloud service provider. Here we see CSPs. So it's like renting computing power and storage, right, from a company that owns huge data centers. So you don't have to set up your own data center. You can just have it delivered remotely via the internet, which is really cool. So it's a little bit Inception-like, right? These servers, right, is what make the internet possible. But these servers are also delivering computing technology so that we can build, on top of whether it's publishing a website to the internet or it's simply, right, developing an app, right, at your local business, inside your office, right? Whatever you need, right? Cloud computing can apply to many different applications. The point is that cloud service providers are handling all of that time-consuming, expensive, difficult work of setting up your own servers. They're doing it for you, and they're delivering everything that the servers do to your business via the internet. So cloud is the term used to describe services or resources delivered remotely via the internet. Now, remember, the cloud, it's not some floating magical thing that's in the air. It's actual physical resources. I'll definitely throw a little extra video for this week for those of you curious, right, how the internet works, right, and how the cloud works, which it's really just another term for delivering stuff over the internet. And then, of course, computing refers to data processing, data storage, and software. So we're going to talk about what are the different types of computing, right, resources that are delivering, right? So in the example of the barista, right, they're giving you coffee. Well, what is a cloud service provider giving you? What are they delivering exactly? Before we get to that, just know here are some of the big characteristics of cloud computing. The reason they're almost always better, right, than doing stuff in-house. There are some cases where in-house is still preferable under certain conditions, under certain contexts. We'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, key characteristics of cloud computing. Why is it so popular? Well, on-demand access. It means that whenever you need computing resources, they will be delivered for you. And in that line, right, is scalability. How much resources do you need, right? Because cloud computing is handling that in a massive data center, not just one, but many data centers all over the world. If you need to suddenly double, triple, 10x, 100x, right, the amount of computing resources that your business needs, whether it be storage, right, or processing power, cloud computing makes it possible to scale up and scale down very, very quickly. And again, following this thread, right, of why is cloud computing so convenient? Well, if it's scalable, that means that your price is also scalable. Because if you set up your own servers, right, you're putting a lot of upfront costs. And if you put maybe too much server computers, right, you're going to have not only a huge waste of resources, your electricity bill is going to be expensive because those server computers are not cheap to run. So yeah, with outsourcing this to a cloud service provider, because they can scale up and scale down to your specific needs, that means they're not going to charge you, right, as much as you doing it yourself. So pay as you go. This month you use less resources, well, your bill is also going to go down. Now, if you had that in-house, right, your bill is going to be constant because you're running all those computers at once, unless you set up some crazy software, right, in order to better utilize your resources, which is possible, right? There is virtualization and whatnot, but cloud computing, the convenience, it's hard to beat. Remote access, you can access your data and applications from anywhere. Because it is a cloud service over the internet, that means whether you're, on the Western Hemisphere, Eastern Hemisphere, you can access your stuff from anywhere. And because it's going to be managed by providers, right, they're going to handle all the infrastructure, all the expenses, all these data centers, right? They're going to build all of that. They're going to manage that infrastructure. They're going to make sure that even if one data center goes down, there's going to be thousands of other ones ready to pick up the slack for your business, for your computing needs. So some popular ones, of course, we've already mentioned Amazon Web Services, or AWS. They're kind of the biggest one in cloud computing. But we have other ones. We also have Microsoft Azure. We have Google Cloud. So there are other options. It's not just AWS. So what do we mean, right? So we keep talking about delivering resources, outsourcing it. They'll handle the stuff for you, deliver it over the internet, over the cloud. What are they delivering exactly? Well, they're delivering computing resources. So that's hardware and software components that enable a computer system to perform tasks, process data, and run apps. So that's the formal definition, but I like to break it down into different categories. So these are the main types of computing resources that a business might purchase, right, from a cloud service provider. So we have compute resources. So that's resources for computation and processing of data. We also have memory resources, which are somewhat intertwined, but not to be confused with each other. So this is for high speed storage and retrieval of data. We'll kind of make the distinction between computation and this memory in some of the future slides. And then, of course, we have networking resources. So that's transferring data, right? Whether it's your business in maybe China and you have another office in Germany, you can deliver those resources, right, through the cloud very easily. You can certainly do that in-house, but again, right, upfront costs, difficult to do, time-consuming, takes away time from your real business, right? Your real business is not setting up servers. It's probably doing something else. And then, of course, we have storage resources. So that's for long-term storage, right? So storage of data, files, and backups, right? And the cool thing about the cloud is they have redundancy, right? Again, if one data center goes down and all your important, your entire application was living in that data center, well, it's also going to be backed up at, 10, 20, maybe 30 other data centers, just to make sure that if one goes down, one gets nuked, the other one's going to be available, and it's going to back up all those resources, all that information, all that data. Of course, if we're talking about cloud computing, we're going to have to talk about the different types of cloud computing. So there's three main categories. There's infrastructure as a service, there's platform as a service, and software as a service. And here you see the little acronyms. So each type of cloud computing provides different levels of control, flexibility, and management so that a business can select the right set of services for their specific computing needs. So maybe you want a lot of control over the resources. You want to change things, right? You want to have access to fine tune and configure your cloud computing resources. You're probably going to go with something like infrastructure as a service. Now we also have at the other end, right? We have software as a service. So that's pretty much everything is being taken care of. Really what they're delivering is a ready to use app for a user to interact with. For example, Google Docs, right? You go onto the website and you have this it's basically Microsoft Word over the internet. That's going to be an example of software as a service. But let's take a deeper dive. So infrastructure as a service. So it offers the fundamental building blocks of IT, of information technology infrastructure. So that's anything from virtual machines, storage, networking, the whole shebang. So you have full control in infrastructure as a service over the operating system. So you want to use Linux, you want to use Windows, you want to use Mac. You have full control over that, over the applications, the networking. It's the highest level of flexibility and management of IT resources. You can fine tune everything in infrastructure as a services. So maybe you want to host a website, right? And it's important that you can control what platform it runs on, the networking, right? The traffic between your application, the different components of your application. We'll talk about a little bit of how applications are really made nowadays. I know this is still, we're talking at a very high level, right? So don't get overwhelmed. We're just kind of giving you an intro. We'll take a deeper dive in all these topics as we go in the class, but it's important right up front to give you some of the vocab. So infrastructure as a service, you're getting the entire building, right? Every single resource, every single building block, you're going to have control over. So maybe you want to host a website. Maybe you want to develop a new app, test out your app. That's actually what I did. I was a software developer in my previous role. Or maybe you just want to store and backup data. And then we have platform as a service. So that's a platform for developers to build, deploy, and manage applications without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. Maybe you don't care so much, right, about how many resources are being delivered or what type of resources or, when to scale up, when to scale down. If you just want a platform for development, usually development is kind of what platform as a service works for, then you're going to go for PaaS. So the cloud service provider automates the IT infrastructure. So they're going to handle all the computing, right, all the resources you need on their end, and they're going to deliver you the final resources so that you can make your own app, right, develop or manage the software, whatever you're doing, right? Cloud computing, there's so many applications. But platform as a service, a good way to think about it is if you're building an app, you don't really care about the underlying infrastructure. You just want to get to building stuff. And that's how it is for a lot of developers nowadays. If I want to go and make a new iOS app, I'm not an IT expert, right? I don't know how to set up a server, for example, or how to configure virtualization, right? So that the resources are used efficiently. I'm going to let the cloud service provider do that. So all I have to worry about is coding up the app and then deploying it through the cloud service. They're going to handle all the boring cloud computing resource stuff. All I'm going to give them is an app for them to host on their servers. Remember, the servers, right, can handle all those different requests to your application. One of the requests might be for your entire application as a whole. So some use cases are going to be developing and deploying web or mobile applications, streaming, for example, workflows, again, development. So if you're making a new app, that's a great application for platform as a service. So let's take a pause here. Can you think of any popular examples of software as a service applications? That's in the next slide. Whoops, I didn't change the title here. This should say software as a service. But yeah, let's go ahead and define it first before you go into that little discussion, right? So software as a service delivers entire applications over the internet. So this isn't so much like, think of it as traditional cloud computing, right? Where your business needs resources. This is delivering the entire app, the final product. So for example, Google Docs is an example of software as a service. Gmail, it's a ready-made app. It is being delivered over the internet, so it's technically still part, right? It's a category of cloud computing. Remember, this shouldn't say platform, this should say software as a service. So users access the software via the web without needing to install it. Google Docs, you don't have to install Google Docs, you just have to navigate to the web page. It's fully managed by the cloud service provider, so security, maintenance, updates, they handle everything. So Google, right, the cloud service provider for Google Workspace, they're handling everything. So a lot of these, you pay as you go, right? You pay for a subscription. Some of them are free, in the case of Google Workspace, right? If you're using something like customer relationship management, that's helpful, right? If you have a business with a lot of customers, and you want to manage them, Salesforce is an example of a ready-to-use software, of a software as a service that works over the internet. But yeah, can you think of any popular examples of software as a service applications? Think of web-based apps that you use. You go on the internet, and it's a tool that you use on the internet. Here's some examples, so definitely think of some outside of the ones we mentioned here. And then, of course, here's just a compare and contrast over the different types. We have our infrastructure, platform, software as a service. So infrastructure as a service, it's the entire infrastructure. Platform as a service, they're going to give you some runtime tools. So you're going to actually running the app. You don't have to worry about, tweaking, fine tuning stuff. They're going to handle that. And then software as a service does everything. Infrastructure, runtime, and the actual software, they're providing it. In platform as a service, you're providing the software, right? You're hosting it on their servers. In infrastructure as a service, maybe you're hosting a software, but you also need to fine tune and control, right? The networking, the servers, the storage, hardware, etc. So that's typical, right, for some high level engineering.